But a lot of people were unfairly treated by a bunch of treasonous, horrible people. And they used the intelligence agencies of our country to try and steal an election and to try and do a coup. When you think, I mean, who would ever think this country, but that's all you can say. I mean, some people would say, well, that's a conspiracy theory. No, just take a look at the records. So it's just a very exciting, for me, it's a very exciting thing because we found something that nobody would have thought possible. Now let's see what happens. But we have them called. They spied on our campaign. It's our campaign. And if you want to save America, you have to go out, get out, and vote. This is the most important.
They cannot deliver, the Democratic Party cannot deliver votes on November 3rd. So therefore, they've got to use any means necessary to steal it from Trump. And you're absolutely correct. This thing of violence, the radical parts of BLM, the Marxist parts of BLM, and the radical parts of Antifa are going to be out in full force. I mean, this is what they're talking about now. They have this thing called the Transition Integrity Project. Remember, they say transition. They are saying Trump's going to lose, right? We're going to force a defeat, and we're going to drive Trump from the White House. For the One America audience, you should understand, this is going to be the greatest crisis in the history of our republic. It's going to be a greater crisis than before the Civil War. They're going to try to undo and overturn a democratically elected president, and they're going to try to put in an unelected, illegitimate regime led by Joe Biden on Inauguration Day in 2021. Everybody's got to do everything humanly possible to stop this.
Welcome to War Room Pandemic, Wednesday, September the 23rd, the year of our Lord 2020, broadcasting live from Capitol Hill. I'm Raheem Kassam, here in Washington, D.C. with Jack Maxey on the John Fredericks Radio Network, on Real America's Voice, on the G News and GTV, subtitled in Mandarin, blown through the CCP's firewall, and later on in the day in Newsmax TV. We've got Stephen K. Bannon joining us live from New York. Steve.
We serve it up hot and fresh every day on Real America's Voice. Really want to thank the guys out in Denver, a great co-production partner with the John Fredericks Radio Network. But now they're everywhere. They're Chicago channel, Comcast Channel 113, their Dish Channel 219, ever expanding. I really appreciate the team out there. Of course, everybody else that picks up the show. In particular, remember in the podcast folks, this is episode 401, we're almost 15 million downloads in the podcast. So the key to this show is hashtag War Room Pandemic in the live stream, comments, observations, telling us what we should be covering, what we're missing, and also just pushing out the content all day long. You see, the President of the United States is listening. We've been talking about this now for a couple of months where everybody's kind of getting woke to the fact, and I know the left doesn't like it. New York Times, Dave Leonard, talk about a hater, right? He's actually a pretty nice guy if you meet him, but man, what a Trump hater he is. He's written a column in today's New York Times, how Trump wins, right, or how Trump can win. And if you look at what's happening now, they've been exposed, Raheem, through National Pulse, and these other great sites are coming up, Revolver, all the new emerging sites, Virginia Star, all the stuff with Michael Patrick Leahy, Tennessee Star, Gateway Pundit, everybody that's really breaking these stories every day, National Pulse at the tip of the spear. It's pretty, I'm getting very enthusiastic that the game day vote is going to be a blowout if everybody does their job, if everybody gets focused, right? And if you're one of the Bernie guys that, you've listened to the show and say, hey, you're going to go vote for Biden, go do it. What we want is participatory democracy. We don't want anybody that doesn't get out there, doesn't get a chance to vote. What we're adamantly opposed to is all this phony voting that's going to go on in the vote by pound or vote by ballot, which is going to happen. But trust me, and the left should understand this. Media matters. Everybody watches the show. We've got people everywhere. We're raising volunteers nonstop. People are going to the ramparts. There are going to be poll watchers. There are going to be election officials. There are going to be lawyers. There's going to be new media. All this is going to be covered. You're not going to hide. All the rocks are going to be unturned. All the cockroaches are going to be there. And I'm really sorry of people on the Transition Integrity Project. Some of these law firms, some of these officials are all saying, "Oh my gosh, you guys are doxing us. You're making us famous." Well, we're going to make you. We're not going to dox you, but we're going to make you famous. So people, you're not going to be able to hide in the shadows and steal a presidential campaign. We've got Matt Gaetz on here with his new book at 10:30, Firebrand. I take full credit for calling him the firebrand of the Trump movement. This book is going to be huge. And man, what a publisher. Simon & Schuster, one of the most prestigious publishers, with a massive book. Matt Gaetz out with Firebrand. He'll be here at 10:30 and talk to us about Florida. Raheem, Jack, what I want to hear is your guys' ideas. Some polling's coming out today. And for our audience, Donald Trump's up 4. WAPO, or ABC, Washington Post poll, Trump up 4 in Florida. Now we know why Michael Bloomberg's writing $100 million checks, infusing cash in there, so Trump can't win on game day. And then yesterday, Raheem, didn't he come out, or Jack, with $16 million to pay felons to take care of all their debts? Yep. And brother Matt Gaetz, that's why I love Gaetz. He's on it. He's a terrific lawyer. He's saying, let's go sue these guys. I think these RNC, the state parties, I think the lawsuits ought to start flying right now. Of all the collusion going on, I think they'll be suing Bloomberg's news site. People ought to be suing these guys like crazy. Take them to the FEC, take them everywhere to get on with to break up this collusion between big media, social media, and the Biden campaign. This illegitimate, unelectable junta that's trying to reverse what's going to be a massive, massive win for Donald Trump on 3 November. Guys, thoughts, observations?
Well, I think that one of the things that these polls point out, and I think it's this growing weakness in the Hispanic population that Donald Trump is suffering, and you're seeing this in Florida. I think the big surprise for the Democrats is going to be
weakness in the Hispanic population. You're saying the strength of the Hispanic population is showing for backing MAGA, right? Not weakness.
Yes, absolutely. Weakness in terms of their traditional Democrat support. And I think that this is going to be clear in a lot of the border states. I think that the Democrats have overestimated the kind of belief that they have in the sort of homogeneity of the Hispanic vote. And I think that one of the things that's going to be very interesting in Florida is we have a massive number of Puerto Ricans living in Central Florida now, particularly after the Hurricane Maria. And I think that people are going to be shocked to find out that a large, large number of them are going to go out and vote for Donald Trump. It's not going to be what we've seen traditionally in a Puerto Rican vote, like in New York City. This is a completely different population, much more squared away, motivated, and I think that they're going to come out in strength for Donald Trump.
What gives you that, besides a gut feel, do you have any analytics or anything that you look at and you look at these crosstabs that gives you a feeling that that's going to happen? I mean, some of the polling, I know Steve Cortez is evangelizing this. He's been saying for a while the Striver's economy, things like the China bringing back high value added manufacturing jobs is going to draw this to the it's going to draw Hispanic working class, and particularly men, to the Trump movement. Have you seen any analytics that give you that feel?
Look, I'll put my cephalogical hat on for a second and go through some of the data points in these polls that we're seeing. Firstly, these are much better representative samples than some of the national polling that we've been seeing. They're larger than the national polling. Some of the national polling organizations only asking between 450 and 500 voters. These ones are anywhere between 650 and 750, but that's only per the state. So already you're off to a better start with this. You're also getting the differentials in these latest ABC and Washington Post polls between registered voters and likely voters. Remember, last week we talked about how that ABC poll didn't have a distinction. They just had a general voting preference of general Americans asked, and that doesn't give you representative samples. This one, they seem to have changed it, used a different methodology here. So they break that down. And what it goes further, and it shows that when you go from registered to likely voters, the margin narrows even further and allows Republicans even to take the lead in those circumstances. So for me, it's very clear, and Steve, I'd like to get your thoughts on this from back in 2016, that there does appear to be a scattergun approach from the Democrat Party, much like in 2016, whereas the Republicans seem to be much more targeted and much more going after those firstly registered but secondly likely voters.
I think the Democrats, I think it goes back to what Jack Maxey said at the beginning. I think that they have taken for granted these kind of demographics that people are going to vote a simple way by the psychodynamics they see. And I think they've just taken people for granted. I said from the very beginning, Hillary Clinton was going to have to close on a coalition that she's never really had to close on before. The Clintons were always backed by the white working class in Arkansas, and even when they ran nationally, right? And they were going for a new coalition, and I didn't think she could close it, and she didn't close it, right? I think Biden's the same way, and I think it's actually more apparent in this cycle. As Jack Maxey said, I've been shocked how they have not addressed the issues of the black working class, right? I've been shocked how they have not addressed the issues of the Hispanic and Latino working class. They take these people for granted. I think what they sell is not totally sellable. And I think this is one of the powers of new media, get it out there. And you're seeing, you know, some of the candidates we have from Baltimore all the way throughout the rest of the country, Hispanic candidates, black candidates that are really kind of fire breathers on the right. I just think it's fantastic. And I think that they've taken the Biden campaign, I also think is very listless. That's why I think you need to see guys like Bloomberg. Bloomberg has hit the panic button. He has hit, you know, general quarters, this $100 million infusion, and then to go immediately to felons, right, which they realize is going to break. According to this is their analysis I saw yesterday. Somebody quoted Associate Bloomberg, it breaks 80-20, right, to vote for Democrats. So they're now down to the felons, right, because I don't think they can sell this to the Hispanic and Latino striker class, the working class and the middle class. And I've been kind of shocked at where these numbers are. Also for our audience, remember, you see all these things on likely voters. The key is, are you a likely voter to go stand in line and vote on election day, right? Are you going to have a vote that counts, or one of these vote by ballots, right? And I realize that, you know, for a lot of the elderly community down there, there's been some softness about what Trump's done with the pandemic. Well, look, you got to weigh and measure yourself how he's handled the pandemic versus, I really haven't seen a Biden plan. I've seen some happy talk for March. So, but it's this whole thing of this mass hysteria that I think, Jack and Raheem, that they have traumatized the low information voters of the Democratic base is really coming back to haunt them. And I think you're starting to see it in the numbers now. This Florida number, I can't emphasize how big this number is. When we've had polls, guys, up until a couple of weeks ago to show, and some polls showing down 8 and 10 points in Florida. To have the Washington Post ABC poll, which is still leans Democratic, have him up 4, and that doesn't even talk about game day votes. This is why that poll was the Bloomberg guys clearly polled this before. They knew they had a problem. They don't trust the campaign. They don't trust the DNC. Bloomberg trusts himself. He goes in and says, first off, he throws Hawkfish out there to go on Axios HBO and say about Trump's 404 electoral votes on election night. Then he puts $100 million in. Then he just put another $16 million in to pay for the debts of the felons, which Matt Gaetz is going to go suing. Yeah. So I'm going to toss it back to you. We've got you know, this is a busy show today, but we want to hear your voice. Hashtag War and Pandemic, and also in the live stream we're going to be talking a lot about the pandemic later. But back to you guys. Take us out.
Well, and you said taking for granted a lot of those voters, Steve. Our lead story on the National Pulse website right now is an exclusive from Vernon Jones, Georgia Democrat, who says specifically that Biden has taken black people for granted for 50 years. We'll have more of that, more from this polling as well, including down to the specific issues: economy, crime and safety, coronavirus, political protests, healthcare, equal treatment of racial groups. We'll drill down into the numbers here on Hashtag War and Pandemic. Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam, Stephen K. Bannon return in just a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
So get your friends, get your family, get your neighbors and your co-workers, and get out and vote. And early voting, if you didn't know it, has already begun. And watch it, and watch those fake ballots. You got to go out and turn them in. If you see somebody cheating, you got to turn them in. From Erie, and you probably will. It's going to be a mess. Watch this. But get out and vote. Early voting. From Erie to Easton. From Altoona to Scranton, from Harrisburg to right here in Pittsburgh. Say hello to Big Ben. We stand on the shoulders of Pennsylvania patriots who gave their blood, sweat, and tears for their beloved country.
You made up your mind on the Supreme Court. How close?
I'm getting very close to having a final decision made. Very, very close. I'm going to make it, I believe, at 5 o'clock on Saturday. I'll be having a conference. Oh, I don't think so. We need 9 justices. You need that. With the unsolicited millions of ballots that they're sending, it's a scam. It's a hoax. Everybody knows that. And the Democrats know it better than anybody else. So you're going to need 9 justices up there. I think it's going to be very important because what they're doing is a hoax with the ballots. They're sending out tens of millions of ballots, unsolicited, not where they're being asked, but unsolicited, and that's a hoax. And you're going to need to have 9 justices. So doing it before the election would be a very good thing because you're going to probably see it because what they're doing is trying to sow confusion and everything else. So I think you're going to need the 9 justices. Also, I have a constitutional obligation to put in 9 justices. So I think you're going to be very impressed when you see all of them. I mean, they're all great. These are all very talented people. And I think you'll be very impressed by the person chosen. Okay? Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome back to the War Room. It's Wednesday, September the 23rd, the year of our Lord 2020. Matt Gaetz is in studio with us. You know, the thing I like about Congressman Gaetz is he's always early. He's never late. He's always early. He's in the seat. Stephen K. Bannon joining us down the line. Jack Maxey in studio here in Washington, D.C. Steve.
Well, listen, I'm glad the president is now, I think the argument, and the best argument is you need 9 justices. The Democrats have forced this. The progressive left has forced this. They're using lawfare. They have Perkins Coie. That's all in the New York Times. They got a war room set up. They're going to use lawfare to try to reverse the real election that's going to take place on November 3rd. And now you got the polls are all breaking the president's way. You realize why Mike Bloomberg has hit the panic button. First, he gets Hawkfish to go up on Axios and HBO, talk about the 5th scenario, which is Trump winning with 404 electoral votes on election night. And they reversed that with this fake ballot, voting by the pound, voting by the ballot, right? They reversed that in a week or two. Then he hits the panic button, $100 million infused into Florida, all for game day. And now yesterday, $16 million on top of that to basically pay off the debts of felons. We were going to have Matt Gaetz on here. We had this book for a while. His new amazing book, Firebrand, from Simon & Schuster. You got to get it. Go to Amazon, independent bookstores. But get that book today. We're going to talk a lot about Firebrand. You know, we called him Speaker Gaetz back in impeachment. This is a young man who changed the direction of the impeachment. With very smart events, media events that got people's attention about the seriousness of what they were doing behind closed doors. He then, as a brilliant litigator, he was able to be really a part of the Trump team and also down on these committees doing a great job. On pandemic, he's been amazing. And I tell you, a real firebrand. But Congressman Gaetz, I think the issue and the business before us today relates to the great state of Florida. President, and I don't know what the campaign was doing 10 days ago or 2 weeks ago talking to the media, but it was ridiculous. The pathway to the presidency goes right through the great state of Florida for Donald J. Trump. We won it in 16 when we had such a massive turnout in your area. And quite frankly, because of you, we went down there so many times. You guys did a great job in the Panhandle. Overwhelming turnout in the Panhandle. That didn't allow Broward and Palm Beach County to steal it. We got it outside the margin of error for theft. But right now, we're on tenterhooks. Great polling today. But I want to go and talk about the issue that you brought up yesterday about Michael Bloomberg. I want to drill down on what Bloomberg is doing in the state of Florida and what Congressman Matt Gaetz says has to be done to thwart this.
Well, thanks. First, on the issue of ballots, whenever you have a close election, and by the way, Trump's going to win Election Day. We know that. They know that. And so Trump's going to be up on Election Day. And what we're going to want to know principally is this question. What is the total universe of ballots that is left to be counted? because then that allows you to drill down and determine what of those ballots are valid. What they're trying to do is create an unknowable universe of potential ballots to be counted so that they can extend out the chaos as they have their Antifa thugs taking the streets. I honestly think that is the strategy. Now, the Bloomberg feature, I think, is a violation of Florida election law, a felony, and it ought to be looked at by our attorney general. So Florida election law says that you cannot offer anything of value to someone directly or indirectly with the hopes of impacting whether or not they will cast a vote. And here you've got Bloomberg not paying off the debts of all felons, just paying off the debts of black and Hispanic felons with a particular voting history, with a particular voter registration status. And what makes this prosecutable is that they wrote their own confession in these donor memos. Like, normally you would never be able to prove that someone is paying off these exact felons' restitution costs to encourage them to vote or to get them to vote for a particular candidate. But in an effort to raise money from other liberal donors, they literally wrote out that that is exactly what their intent was. That was what they were doing, and it was intended to influence this election. Now, we heard, Steve, for years about Russia being this great negative influence on the election, their troll farm and the tens of Americans that would show up to their rallies. But now you've got actual election interference targeted at tens of thousands of voters in the pivotal state in the country. And I think that we got to start playing this game like they are. And I think we need our attorney general to direct the statewide prosecutor to open an immediate investigation.
Okay, a couple of things. By the way, Bloomberg's totally a partner of the Chinese Communist Party. He's the one in Singapore 18 months ago, had Wan Shan, one of the great devils in the world, up on stage saying, hey, this is the most powerful guy in the world. This guy's wonderful. The China One Belt, One Road, the whole China plan is great. You know, Mike Bloomberg's owned lock, stock, and barrel by the CCP. And if the Bloomberg guys don't like it, let's do some discovery. Let's go see the emails. Let's go see what Mike Bloomberg's, the chats he's had with the Chinese Communist Party. So this is why I'm so serious. Why can the Republican Party do so? Can you file FEC? I mean, the Bloomberg guys are some of the smartest guys around, right? Wolfson and this crowd. How did they make this mistake that teed it up? And do you think we ought to get the Republican Party should do FEC complaints, or do you think we'll go to the criminal side with the state attorney general?
I would go straight to the attorney general with the statewide prosecutor, but I think that the Bloomberg tax guys might have gotten crossways with the political operatives and the fundraisers. I think that if you're wondering where the error was made, because they go set up these dark money organizations to do this like partisan voter mobilization effort, and they go seed that with cash, and then they go and lash it to the guys saying, well, yeah, like the reason you need to give money to this is because we're going to specifically use it for these voters for this purpose, and it just removes the veil on the whole deal for Bloomberg. And, look, you talk about, Steve, the tactic of utilizing the discovery process. Frankly, I think that's what's happening to you right now. I think that the reason that people are targeting you is not because of some accounting error with some charity, but because there is an effort by the establishment of both parties to target the energetic populists who really do fuel the America First movement. And it's what I write about in my book. It's the life you've led. It's what direct action was called for during the impeachment process. And by the way, after we reelect this president, we're going to have to do it again. Because the Bushes and the Cheneys and the Romneys, they haven't gone anywhere. They're still around. And they're hoping that our populist movement fizzles out. It's my hope that we can keep it roaring.
Look, we win. You're absolutely correct. We're going to win on the 3rd, and then we've got the battle, and it's already started. We got the battle of our lifetime, really the Civil War. They got lawfare, they've got the media and social media, they've got the street thugs. I mean, they lay it all out. National Pulse has done such a great job of exposing this over the last couple of months. It's one of the reasons I was never going to join the campaign. This is the fight that we're going to need. You're going to need street fighters to actually power through here. But you make a great point. I tell people, hey, Election Day, we got another battle getting inaugurated. We'll win that. But then every day in his second term will be Stalingrad, right? Because then you're going to have the entire apparatus. You're going to have the progressive left, plus the never Trump, a Republican establishment that detests this guy, right, Matt? So I know this is a big part of the book. I want to get into the book in the next segment. But right now, I just want to make sure in Florida, walk us through Florida. Where do you think we stand? You know Florida better than anybody. You're the one that told me last time, hey, I think we got this, right? Because we're going to have this massive turnout in the Panhandle. Where do you think we stand right now?
Usually folks watch the I-4 corridor in the center of the state, but let me give you a sleeper. Miami-Dade County. Right now, we are seeing Hispanics break for the president in remarkable numbers, and it is because they are not here for this neo-Marxist Black Lives Matter nonsense. A lot of the Hispanics in Florida, they're builders. They want to build strong churches, strong families, strong communities. And like the embrace of arson and violence as politics is not what they're here for. A lot of these folks are just a generation or two away from actual socialism in Latin America. And so I think that Biden's going to run way behind Hillary in Miami-Dade County. They won't build the margins there, and we'll whoop them in the Panhandle as always.
All right, Steve, we've got to go to a break. The book is Firebrand Dispatches from the Front Lines of the MAGA Revolution by Congressman Matt Gaetz. You're going to want to get it. It's up on the screens. In the break, why not? Go to Amazon, get your copy. We'll be back. More hashtag War and Pandemic. Congressman Gaetz, Jack Maxey, Stephen K. Bannon, Raheem Kassam. See you in a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
I will be calling on the Florida Attorney General to launch an investigation into Mike Bloomberg for potentially engaging in bribery and vote buying in the state of Florida. Here's how that works, Lou. In Florida, you only get to vote if you're a convicted felon, if all of your court costs, fines, fees, and restitution are paid off. And so what Michael Bloomberg is doing is creating a politically motivated way to retire the debts of these felons in exchange for their votes. And it's not every felon, it's just those which they have specifically identified as the Biden voters. And so again, that's offering a bribe, an inducement for someone to behave a certain way in voting. I think it's potentially criminal. It's probably the worst waste of money for Michael Bloomberg since he was a failed presidential candidate.
That is the voice and the image of Congressman Matt Gaetz. We were the first ones to call him Speaker Gaetz back during the War Room impeachment when his acts really drove the narrative, changed the total narrative, and really woke up the House members on Capitol Hill. You know, Churchill once said, "Courage is the most important of all virtues, because it's upon courage that all the other virtues rest." One thing to say about Matt Gaetz, he's got courage, and that's why he's called the Firebrand. He's our guest now with his new book that's out by Simon & Schuster. You can get it everywhere. Firebrand Dispatches from the Front Lines of the Trump Revolution. And he is on the front line. That's about the courage. Matt, walk us through your journey. How did you get to be really one of the guys, you, Rick Grinnell, a handful of people are considered really the people that will throw down in the moment that the president and the country and the movement needs somebody to step up and throw down? How did you get to be one of those people? Walk our audience through the journey of Matt Gaetz.
When I arrived in Washington, I really believed this could be among the noblest of professions. And I found quickly that despite the president's win, because of people like Paul Ryan and others in Congress, it was a lot like the oldest profession, where you were doing favors for money. And after seeing the way the PACs and the Washington lobbyists just had total control over people, after watching members of Congress have their family members employed in no-show jobs just to settle up an influence peddling game, I decided that the only way for me to make an impact for my country, for my president, was to get out of the system of money laundering in Washington, D.C. with political money, and instead to just go out and tell the American people what I believe with vigor and gusto, and at times take direct action. You know, you talk a lot about the need to see more inspirational leadership in the populist right, and I just feel like in Congress we got too many folks sitting around staring at their own nameplate wanting to have meetings with each other. That's why I stormed the SCIF. That's why I take a different approach in congressional hearings, often rejecting the advice of our leadership. And like I write in the book about how still in this place, committee assignments are for sale. I had to pay $75,000 to be on the Armed Services Committee. I double paid. I paid $150, so they put me on Judiciary as well. And that's how the country knows my name. And so I think that there's still a lot of work to be done. And I wrote this book because I want to present a vision for the country that builds on the president's great successes, but that also focuses us on what matters. You know, we've got the Bushes and the Cheneys still rolling around wanting us to invade some new Middle Eastern country and topple some new dictator. Meanwhile, the strategic challenge we have is the competition with the Chinese Communist Party. One of my favorite chapters in the book is China is not our friend. You know, we had Henry Kissinger and that ilk telling us that if we just drew China closer to us, it would make them love us more. And all it did was make us more vulnerable, and it made them stronger at the expense of hardworking Americans. That's what we got to fight against.
Can you compare and contrast, and guys jump in here, but on this book, Firebrand, we want every one of our viewers to go out and get this. This is important for you to get to know Matt Gaetz, get to know his thinking. I know you see him on here on the show. He comes in breathing fire, but this book is a chance to really understand his thinking. Matt, if you compare your thoughts and your vision and kind of where you share that vision with the president and other people in the MAGA movement of where America has to go, these are versus, not the progressive left, but just versus what is more considered the establishment of the Republican Party, really the donor class. Compare and contrast. What's the biggest differences, and are there areas that we can work together?
Well, you know, take Dan Crenshaw. He wrote a book called Fortitude. I don't know if we need more fortitude. I think we need more attitude. You know, the Dan Crenshaw view of the Republican Party, and Dan's a patriot, great guy, love him, but he thinks that we just need to like grin and bear it a little longer, that we need to have more grit and more determination. And I think that view of conservatism relegates us to a defense of the worst parts of the status quo. Like, we can't just have feeble attempts at reform. My firebrand attitude is that we have to have a political realignment in this country where we no longer invade everywhere and invite every illegal immigrant across our border illegally while we impoverish every town USA with some trade deal for a multinational company. You know, I think we put our people and our country first, and there are rising voices in our party who I think would return to like McCainism rather than Trumpism. And I'm here to make a different argument. I think it's a fair argument for our party to have, but I'm not going back. Just like AOC's not going back to brunch, I'm not going back to another Bush relative.
To have in one line, a log line, why you think our viewers, by the way, who think you're one of the rock stars of this movement, why should they buy this book right now, given everything that's going on? Why is this book important to get and to kind of read and understand in the run-up to November 3rd?
Well, first, this book is an intimate look at the president's thinking, his responses to various stimuli, his thoughts on policy. And so I think for anyone who loves the president to gain a better appreciation of how he sees things, very important. He also makes fun of me a few times that I always date women that are better looking than me and way out of my league. But you can read about that in the book. But the other thing, Steve, is it's an invitation to an ideology. You know, I want to be focused on China, not on the Middle East. I want to ensure that we build our country before we rebuild Kandahar, right? And I think that those are policy choices we have to undertake. I also write a very important chapter in here called Uncanceled, because you know what? If we allow this cancel culture to erode our history, to degrade our patriotism, all these fights that we have will not matter at all. And we need to summon the weird and the different among us to solve our tough challenges. And I wonder, just throughout human history, how many of the great minds would have been canceled, would have been excluded from public discourse because of a strange theory or thought that they had. So, I don't believe in canceling people. I believe in uncanceling people. And I think that when you go find the canceled man and you extend a hand of friendship and you lift people up, those are exactly the kind of folks that will help us solve the tough challenges to defeat China. I mean, we talk about the political conflict with China, but there is a very real technical conflict that we have where we need the brightest Americans working on our version of 5G and artificial intelligence and machine learning and quantum computing. And if we cancel them all because they're a little weird, well, I think we ultimately relegate ourselves to failure. So I have a more inspirational call, and I hope people will heed it and join me.
Right now, we look at some of the tech issues. We got unrestricted warfare with the Chinese. Where do you stand on the president's TikTok deal?
We need a TikTok deal. I think that it sets the stage for a lot more of these, right? Like TikTok is a strategic asset of the Chinese Communist Party. But by the way, so is DJI drones. I mean, they own 90% of the drone market here. And our own Department of Homeland Security says that they use these drones to identify critical infrastructure, and they give them to our law enforcement, and we fly them around and we don't stop it. We also, BGI is a genomics company where the Chinese are able to access the genetic material of Americans for mapping potential vulnerabilities. So I think that we have to have a whole-scale strategic approach to the way that China tries to infiltrate our country with these dual-use technologies at scale.
Now, you're probably one of the best guys to be able to tie all this together. Raheem's done a great job. He's answered about the Transition Integrity Project. But if you look at the three verticals of how they're going to try to steal this election from the president, they got a law court part, which you know is a litigator. You've seen the team they put together. They've got a street army part, and you know more about street theater and what needs to be done on law enforcement to take these streets back. But most importantly, as Miles Blow tells us, the social media, which he says the biggest weapon that China has, is also the biggest weapon they have. They have the mainstream media, and they have this social media. They have Facebook, Twitter, Google, all of it. So as we sit here today, and to tee up the next section, I just want you to go on a riff. As you see the converging forces that they're going to bring together to try to take this election away from, the legitimate election away from Donald J. Trump, what's your warning to people?
Well, first on Guo's comment, how foolish does Bill Clinton look? Remember when he said, oh, the Chinese, they're not going to be able to control the internet. That's like nailing Jell-O to the wall. Well, it turns out they did that. They nailed that Jell-O to the wall. All technology means is doing more with less. So authoritarians can also do more with less with technology. And I think that that was a point lost on American politicians back in the 90s. It would be nice if America's technology companies actually loved America. Like, would that be too much to ask? Big Tech Hates America is one of the titles of a chapter in my book, and it does detail the challenges we face. Raheem, weren't you in like Twitter jail recently? I think I was. I think I had like a free Raheem hashtag going. You were labeled for something. I've had content labeled, and here's the deal with big tech, whether it's here or abroad. They want to control what we see and how we think, so that they can control how we act and how we behave. And I mean, even at Google, when Trump won in 2016, they like all gathered around and like had some struggle session together about how deeply challenging it was, and that they needed to do more to stop the president. And when they do that, frankly, we need more people in our administration here to hold them accountable in the legal process. I think we should be a lot more aggressive, bringing antitrust actions, bringing FCC and FEC actions against these folks. And it's why the second term of Trump is so important, because look, Congress is never going to regulate big tech, because Congress is totally bought off by big tech. They hire the relatives of congressmen. I think Schumer's got a relative that like works for Facebook now. And you think he's going to allow regulation of Facebook to go through that isn't exactly what they want? Of course not. So the way we got to get this done is through the executive appointment process. They have staggered terms. Only a two-term president can do it. This needs to be the central focus of the president's second term on the comms front, because if we lose this fight, we'll lose every other fight, because no one will hear us.
You guys, I want you to jump in. How do you stop it right now? How do you stop it so they can't steal it starting the evening of November 3rd? I totally agree with you on the second term. How do we get to a second term? How do we stop? Because they're going to try to steal it. How do we stop big tech from doing that?
Raheem?
Look, I've got enough theories about this, but Steve, we're very close to a break, and I want to address that more in detail when we come back. We also have a lot of comments in the comments section that I think Congressman Gaetz needs to hear before we go to this break. Number 1, I love you, Matt Gaetz. Number 2, Rockstar. Number 3, Matt is real Americana. Number 4, Matt Gaetz' thinking is spot on. Here's my favorite one. Is Matt letting us know he dates? Well, ladies, step forward. He's a catch, much like Raheem. Matt, you're getting so much love.
Much like Raheem. Wow. The War Room date auction. Matt Gaetz and Raheem Kassam.
Matt, you're getting so much love in the live chat right now. And people with questions as well. People want to know, what are you talking about when you're talking about cutting the checks for the committee thing? They'd never heard of anything like that. So we're going to got to come back to that, and you've got to explain that to us a little bit in the next segment as well. And people want to know about your response to the Senate report on Hunter Biden and Hunter Biden's immense use of taxpayer funds, 6 trips to China, funded at taxpayer expense. So much reporting coming out of there from Just the News and John Solomon's group, also the new news division partners of Real America's Voice. That's Just the News and Real America's Voice partnered up now. The National Pulse has stories on the Hunter Biden report up there as well on our breaking news section, our brand new breaking news section. We'll be back with Congressman Gaetz, Stephen K. Bannon, Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam in just a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to hashtag War Room Pandemic, broadcasting live from Washington, D.C. Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam, Congressman Matt Gaetz, guest host for this hour, and Stephen K. Bannon joining us down the line. I'm going to jump right in on some of this and ask you the real tough questions, like The Atlantic asks Joe Biden, how does your hair stay up like that? No, listen.
The Dyson blow dryer has changed my life.
Listen, I want to just pick up on one of the things you said earlier, which the audience was really interested in, which is this committee thing that you were talking about. What do you mean cutting checks for the committee positions?
Well, I mean, every member of Congress owes dues to the political operation of their party. And if you are a new incoming member and you want a prized competitive spot, they tell you the price you have to pay. Now, again, for me to get on armed services, Kevin McCarthy told me to get $75,000 across the street to the Republican National Congressional Committee. And I figured, well, if more than one person did that, then I might still lose the committee slot. So that's why I paid $150,000, figuring, I mean, if it's worth paying for, it's worth paying for twice. And then they came back to me and said, well, you overpaid. So is there another committee that's prized that you would like to serve on? And I said, well, sure, I'll go to the Judiciary Committee. So that is the story of how I ended up on the House Judiciary Committee, overpaying for armed services.
You're going to make some enemies by disclosing how all of this works here in the swamp, but I mean, it's extraordinary that that's the situation. I'm glad to be able to understand that more. I want to come back to what you said about TikTok, because I didn't really hear an answer on that, and I want to pin you down a little bit more. And here's the thing. When the Brexit vote happened in the United Kingdom, we went to the European Union trying to do a deal afterwards, right? But the mantra was, from the Brexit side, no deal is better than a bad deal. Do you accept that with the TikTok situation, no deal, i.e. banning TikTok, is better than a bad deal that leaves Americans' data in the hands of the Chinese Communist Party?
Yes.
Okay, I mean, but how? All right. So if you agree on that position, then how far does this president need to be able to take this? How far should he allow the flexibility on something like this before he just goes, no, you know what? We allowed you your 45 days to put the deal together. The deal sucks. ByteDance still retains majority control of this company. It would still have the backdoor access. It still has the algorithm. It still has access to every single cell phone that the TikTok app is on. So how far does this president wait until we remove TikTok from the App Store?
The national security review, to me, is a binary one. You cannot be in like some area of a gradient where this is okay. Either TikTok functions to the strategic advantage of the Chinese Communist Party or it doesn't. If it does, the deal should not be approved. And, there is no 6-second Jason Derulo dance worth inviting the Chinese Communist Party into the living rooms of, many millions of Americans.
What's with the weight on the SCOTUS nomination, in your estimation? Don't you think we should have moved it by now?
I think that the president knows who he's going to pick. I think that we now know after look, they called Kavanaugh a gang raping, villain, right? And he seemed like a pretty square dude. I think that there is a little time here where we're utilizing the advantage of knowing who we want to pick, preparing, packaging, because we know what's going to happen once this is announced. There'll be tens of millions of dollars dedicated to destroying whoever this person is. And it's a shame.
Matt, what do you think about the idea of completely skipping the committee hearings and just going directly to a vote, particularly if we've chosen somebody who has already been through the process with this Senate?
I wouldn't do that if I were McConnell. I think that the way Democrats treated Kavanaugh was a real backfire on them. And I would give the Democrats the opportunity to back themselves into a corner. I'd hold the hearings. You know what? We're proud of our nominee. I think we want to put our nominee out before the country.
Should they be expedited, though? I mean, should there be a very short time limit put on this thing? I mean, you got how many days until the election now? 39 days and a wake-up or something?
For the Senate, that's like 2 votes. You know, I mean, it ain't exactly a crowd that votes a bunch of times every day. But
Right.
no, look, I think that we got to get moving.
Yeah. I want to ask, Steve.
Let me one thing and then jump in. As you look around with all this mail-in voting throughout the country, Matt, as a lawyer and a guy that's gotten elected to Congress, what states concern you the most, and what rulings right now concern you the most?
Pennsylvania concerns me the most because there is no backstop. Like in North Carolina, I think we've got a court that would be a backstop against fraud. In Florida, the chief elections officials, I think, are a backstop against fraud. In Pennsylvania, the fact that they've got universal mail-in voting, no accountability over the number of ballots, no backstop.
Well, one thing that's interesting, it goes to the Supreme Court issue. Pennsylvania's Republican Party is now going to carry that lawsuit concerning the late counting of absentee ballots or mail-in ballots. They want to extend it for 3 days beyond the election. Well, they say that they are appealing that directly to the federal Supreme Court, which again highlights why we need a 9th justice. And I think delaying this beyond the election, and I know the Democrats are going to try and delay it, I think would be a very dangerous thing.
Just we've got about 2 minutes left here. I just want to get. I mean, you're pretty close to this president, right? I mean, you speak to him relatively often. You would regard yourself as relatively.
It's like you've already read the book, Raheem.
Why don't we have an Antifa ban yet?
We need that from the Attorney General. We need these prosecutions to accelerate. I like what Ron DeSantis did in Florida, raising the penalties for people that were engaged in this organized violence, organized property destruction. I think the Attorney General could learn a lesson from Governor DeSantis in that regard. And look, if Antifa is a terrorist organization, we have to go after the money. That's what we haven't done yet.
Just finally from me, we've got about 90 seconds here. Just a quick one. The Transition Integrity Project, I hope you've seen some of our reporting on this and who's involved. Any plans for like an investigation as to, I mean, there's clearly a foreign influence thing going on here. Any plans to investigate who's behind this thing and what's really going on here?
This is the biggest story in America that no one is talking about. And frankly, it's an area where the Democrats are out ahead of us because they are preparing for the chaos that will ensue when Donald Trump has the win. And they're trying to, count these new batches of ballots like Jack was talking about. And they have built a human resources infrastructure to function as a transition government in absentia of any power vested by the people. We have done nothing to prepare for this legally, and I think that it's a real blind spot. Republicans need to wake up. This is foreign influence, but it's also become a repository for a lot of the Never Trump Republicans to go and do violence to our democracy in a new way. This is the new Russia. What they're doing with the Transition Integrity Project now is the way to try to undermine the validity of the president because they can't beat him in a fair election or a fair debate on the issues.
We got to go to a break now, but the book, ladies and gentlemen, is Firebrand for the television audience. I'm holding it up right now. Firebrand, dispatches from the front lines of the MAGA revolution. One commenter says, Steve, you talk action. How about a donation auction? Goes to Warham in the National Pulse. The winner gets a date with Raheem or Matt if willing.
Hey, if it's enough, they can get a date with both of us.
We'll be back. More Warham Pandemic after this break.